only today. And I would like to welcome today one of our group members. You all know him as Lobster Mike, and without further ado, please come on in.
There we go. Yeah, thanks, Bridget. This is a new thing for me, that's for sure. I'm Mike. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict that doesn't want to drink or use today. And let's see. So I go, where do I start? Okay, well, I'm going to start just with. I'm 74 years old. I was born in 1948, so that's opener. And the first my first recollection of alcohol, I didn't realize I was, of course, an alcoholic. I think I was 12 or 12. I was an altar boy, and I remember going back into the sacristy, and I would know the priests. Well, I learned later, but the first time, a priest that didn't use all the wine, so I dumped that down, and man, I really liked it. So every time I'd serve mass, I would be bummed if it was an alcoholic priest and he used all the wine. So that's that. And now fast forward, when I was 13 was when I started drinking. And I do remember a friend of mine, he knew how to steal liquor out of this little on sale offshore liquor store in Santa Barbara, which is where I was born and raised. So I learned how to do that. And we'd go and I'd get half pints of 10 high. And then somebody keep the guy busy at the counter, and those little half pints, they just slip into your pocket. So I don't know where I got the first half pint I drank. But my sister was 3 years older. So she drove, obviously, I was 13. And so I went to this party and I had this thing, and that's long enough. So long ago, there were no aluminum cans. It was 12-ounce Cokes. So you drank half the Coke out and fill it with 10 high. And I downed that baby, and man, I couldn't get out of the car. I stayed there all night, except I opened the door and throw up. And so that was my first experience. I didn't hate it. It was interesting. So, and that started me on the road about addiction. I'm pretty sure of that. And I think I just feel like it is genetic. I mean, for some reason, I had a grandfather that died of alcoholism when he was 43. I had a father who was an alcoholic. My other grandfather was an alcoholic. There was quite, and it was weird. My mom was always on guards because, she was she didn't go to Al-Anon. She should have gone, but didn't. And we didn't even know about it back then. But she was always on guard that my dad was going to go on the drunk. He was a World War II fighter pilot and flew out of England to to France in the Normandy invasion, and he got shot up and he had to crash his P-51 once. Anyway, interesting cat, anyway. And but he had to go to they didn't call it PTSD back then, but he went to a hospital. They sent him to a hospital when he got back to the States. So from his drinking and alcoholism, they used to give those guys handfuls of bennies or Dexedrine and to get them up to fly the mission. And then they'd have cases of scotch when they got back so they could unwind. My dad would tell me about how he would get back to England and chewing gum was stuck to the roof of his mouth. He was so dehydrated. Okay, enough of that. So anyway, and he got sober. To the best part of that was he died sober, and he had about 20 years. And a good reason why I got sober, because he died when I was in prison, but I'll get to that. And so let's see. High school was, I got kicked out of the Catholic high school in 9th grade. And that's when I lost my religion. I lost I lost my religion, as that song goes. And I had a Franciscan priest that I loved that was a great teacher, and Father Bernard. And then I heard he left. When I got kicked out of the Catholic high school and went to the public school, I heard he left the order and he married a nun. And I said, well, that just sealed the deal. I'm out of it. I'm out of here with the religion too. Anyway, so yeah, I went to the public high school, and I died and gone to heaven, to say that. But anyway, there was lots of girls, and I played sports and did well, but I didn't like football. I just played it because my dad played football at Benson High in Portland, Oregon, and so I did, and I did okay at it. I was pretty good from surfing because I was already into surfing. I started surfing when I was 13. My dad bought me a surfboard, or bought all of us 3 kids a surfboard, but I mainly used it. And he used to constantly say, I should have never bought you that goddamn surfboard. And that's retired from the Highway Patrol. And that's another story. I'm getting into the whole thing. He got out of the Army and got deprogrammed, and my mom had already moved because he used to leave for days and not show up, and there were 3 young kids, so her parents had moved to or Santa Barbara, so she moved down there and brought him and got him to take the whatever it is to be a cop, a city cop, and he took it and got it, but he was going to get fired from that because I had another friend of mine that I fished with it said, yeah, those guys used to always go to the garage and drink. He'd park the motorcycle out in back, the cop bike, and sit in the garage and drink. And so anyway, he didn't get fired from that, but he did take the thing to be a hired patrolman, and he got that job. And we had to move for a while, and then we went back to Santa Barbara. And but I'll get to the fun part here pretty quick, you guys. And yeah, and he lost that job. That's when he went drunk, and I was with him, and I was drinking. That's when my alcoholism had escalated. So here I am. My mom was afraid of my dad, and rightfully so. Because he was drunk all the time then, and he'd gotten retired from the Highway Patrol. He was riding a Harley. He was a chips guy, rode Harleys on the Highway Patrol, and he used to park the Highway Patrol bike in the garage when he was hungover, and he'd turn the radio up so I could hear if he got a call, and he'd sit in there and sip beers, try to get his shit back together, Anyway, that was what I grew up with. Anyway, he was trying to find me. I was surfing down at the beach on this dirt road, and it was after a big rain. There was sinkholes along the cliff, and he was looking for me, and he drove the Harley into the sinkhole, and he ruined his back pulling it out, and he got retired from that. And then it was Katie bar the door. He drank, and I drank, and then I moved in with him, and so that was that. And so I'm drinking with my dad now, and I played football. I went to college for a couple of years, City College, after high school, and I had trophies and stuff, a couple of trophies from high school, and I went to City College, and I didn't do well there because I was drinking so much. I went from 215 down to 190, in like 1 year, 100 pounds. That doesn't work when I was out at whatever, I was a linebacker. Anyway, so I played anyway. I made the team, and so then, but I dropped out, and it was draft time. Everybody was getting drafted, so I got into the National Guard, and my dad was one of my dad's doing. my dad, because he's a decorated World War II fighter pilot, he was the captain at that National Guard for a while, but he blew that because of his drinking. He got drunk at summer camp and they asked him to retire. Anyway, so I'm in the National Guard, and I've got all my friends are going to UCSB University School, and man, I'm a 60s guy now. This is 1966. And civil rights and the draft and the war, and man, I wasn't in that. I wasn't I didn't like it, to put it mildly. And all my friends going to college and UCSB, they're all anti-drafters. One of my friends was one of the guys that burnt the bank down because Bank of America was financing part of the war, the Vietnam War, and him and a couple, I forget how many guys, but they burnt the Bank of America down in Isla Vista. And he did time for that. And later on, he became the city official in Santa Barbara. So he did good after. But anyway, I'm really getting now. So I'm in the National Guard, and I see this company commander comes and says, he goes, well, hey, Holtz, you need to cut your hair. And I went, yeah, okay, well, we need to talk. And he said, well, come to my office after, So I went to his office, and he says, I sat there for like an hour, and he was in his back thing there. So I just got up and I walked in his office. I said, hey, what I got to talk about is this is the last time you're going to see me. You can take this National Guard and stick it in your ass because I'm not coming back. So I did. That was it. I walked out and I didn't come back. But I started getting the the feds started coming by my boat. And it made that, I also at that point started diving as I was an abalone diver, surfing to diving, it was a natural for me. And I did good at it and made good money. I figured, why am I going to screw around? 6 years was the National Guard commitment, and I hated the war. I hated the segregation because when I played football in college, half the team were black. In fact, I played with Johnny Gilbert. I swore I was going to get emotional. This is as far as I'm going to go with the emotions. Okay, I played with Johnny Gilbert. He was one of the first Muslims in Santa Barbara, and he was the world's second fastest human being. The year that Bob Hayes ran a 9.1 at the Olympics, Johnny ran a 9.2, and Hayes's was wind assisted. So so I'm playing football with Johnny Gilbert, and he's a Muslim, and I'd go his body shop, and barber shop, and man, you wanted to see an attitude change. I'd go in to say hi to Johnny because there was a bar next door mainly, and man, you could hear a fucking pin drop in there. Those Muslims were not happy about a white boy, and Johnny would smooth it over. He'd say, "He's all right, boy. He's all right," and that's all. I would leave. And so that was my introduction to segregation. So I hated that, and then I went back in the Army because the feds were coming to my boat, and I figured, man, I got to deal with this problem. So I did. I went back to Fort Ord. I went back, and I just showed up there, and I said, hey, you know what? I made some lie. I'm a hustler, a scammer, and I always have been, and I'm not nearly what I used to be. But back in the day, I told them, oh, you know what, man? The reason I didn't show up for active duty, I knew they were going to send me to active duty, and I only had 2 years to do. And I went back. I said, I was at sea. I never got the letter to tell me to stop. And I skated. I didn't completely. I think they gave me an Article 15 with just a spank of the hand. So then I went into a holding company, and I was waiting there to get orders to go somewhere. And I was hoping it wasn't Vietnam, of course. And I got orders to go to Germany. And while I was there waiting to go, I was walking down the company street because one of my friends from Hawaii, he refused to program, and so they were going to take him to the brig, right? And he broke loose from them. I got to slow down a little bit. He broke loose, ran at Fort Orders right on the coast. He ran to the ocean. He got over the highway, went by the rifle ranges, ran to the ocean, and by that time they had jeeps on the beach and stuff. And he just started swimming. He was a good swimmer, and they had to call the Coast Guard to get him out of the water. So I was going to the mental ward to visit him. And on my way to the mental ward, I hear this guy yelling, "Mike, Mike." I go, "Gary, what's up, man?" I said, "Are you all right?" And he had just gotten medevac, not just, but he'd been medevac out of Vietnam. His point man and his platoon had stepped on a mine, and a big piece of his leg was blown out. And I said, "Oh man, Gary," I said, "Have you been home yet?" And I had a pretty new Volkswagen because I was making money diving. I had a Volkswagen Bug, naturally, and so I put it. I said, "Well, you're going home now, man." I just picked him up, put him in the car, and away we went. We'd already figured out how to get in and off the posts at the back gate, how to open that and get out of there. So we went to Santa Barbara, and I went AWOL for a couple of weeks. We stopped at some surf spots on the way home, saw some friends, and anyway, so now I'm back at Fort Ord with another Article 15. They didn't throw me in jail, and I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I had orders to go to Germany. I said, "I don't care where you send me. I'm not going." You know, I was going to, and man, I'll tell you, that's easy for me to say right now, but it isn't easy to do. And to get out, I'll be honest, another scam. We all lived off the post. We weren't supposed to, but we did. We is like people that were in the resistance. There was a resistance in the Army to resist the draft, and we were active inside the Army. And so all my brothers were at this house, and I said, "Hey man, how do I get out?" They go, "You got to go to the psych ward to see the psychiatrist, and he's got to tell you, get you out." Then he said, "Here, take this on before you go." Gave me like 3 or 4 tabs of Osley acid. So here I go to the psych ward, loaded to the gills. I mean, I am tweaking, right? And I go to talk to the psychiatrist, and I give him a rundown. I mean, I don't know what I said. Whatever I made a lie. I made up some lies. Said, "Oh, my dad used to beat me, and he was military, and I can't. Anytime I see a new whatever." And so about halfway through my spiel, the psychiatrists go, "Oh, and I was hyperventilating too." They said, "Yeah, you got to hyperventilate." So I was hyperventilating, telling this fucking story, and the guy, the psychiatrist says, "Hey, calm down. You're getting out of the Army." And boom, that was it. I quit hyperventilating. I just went, "Okay, that's why I'm here." And so that was and I did get out. And a funny story, I got a funny story with that, but I didn't keep my time, Bridget. You got to give me like a 10-minute warning. Anyway, so I got a funny story too with that, the last day in the Army. I had this company commander, and he was an Iowa football player too, big Iowa defensive tackle. And and everybody, the resistance in the Army back then, most of those guys were, not most, a lot of them worked in offices, right? So they told me where my discharge was, but it's got to go through the chain of command. And these guys were all sympathetic with the resistance. And so I knew where it was at, and they sent an honorable discharge in. And it flew. It went all the way through, and then it ends up at the general's office, and I got it. I'm a private E1 with an honorable discharge. That's the lowest you can be in the Army. And I got, so I go back to company, and the last thing you do is sign out of the company. So I figure, well, what the heck? I had my little Volkswagen, I had my the bug parked ready to go with all whatever clothes I had, which wasn't many. It was loaded up, ready to go, and just up in the parking lot. And so this captain comes out. He says, "Let me see that discharge, folks." And I open it up, and he sees it's an honorable discharge. I didn't hand it over. And he said, he goes, "How the fuck did you get that?" And I closed it, and out the door I went. It was old thing, and I was boogieing for the Volkswagen, right? And he said, stop him, you guys." He's telling these office workers that are sympathetic, and these guys they're walking to catch me. They're not trying to catch me. They're my friends, right? So that was me. That was my last day in the Army. I had no repercussions about not signing out of the company. I got the discharge, and so I went about my life. I got back to Santa Barbara, and and then I was a mess. I had taken so many drugs at that period of my life, and I was but I didn't want to go back diving. So what I did, I went back and went to school and got a captain's license, license to run 100-ton boats, because I'd worked on other little supply boats and stuff here and there and out of the harbor. And I got the license, and my first job, this is a good little thing. I was running James Cagney's old yacht out of Santa Barbara called the Swift of Ipswich. I was the captain, the drunk captain most of the time. But anyway, that was fun. I just did that for about a year. And I got laid off. I didn't get fired, but I got laid off from that. I had, for other reasons I won't go into, but nothing major, except I lost the job. And then I went back, I got a job running crew boats, and I got fired from that job because of drinking. I got drunk. We were on the buoy. I used to run the crew boats out to the oil rigs, and we were hanging on a buoy, and we got drunk. I was into schnapps at the time. I drank a pint of schnapps and went to bed. And then there was a drill. They were drilling on the rig, doing a workovers, they're called. And one of the roughnecks cut his finger off, and they couldn't wake me up. They called me on the radio. I was drunk. I mean, I wasn't that drunk, but I was, but they couldn't wake me up. So what they did, and they threw. I was close enough to the rig. They were throwing 5-gallon water jugs. Jugs were made out of glass back then, in that day, and that didn't wake me up. So they sent a guy over on the personnel basket, and he woke me up. He goes, "God damn, it smells like booze in here." Yeah, and it did, and it was anyway. But I didn't get fired from that. I took the guy in. The guy didn't care. The roughneck didn't care. He said, "Well, the finger fell over the side. They didn't have it to put back on. Thank goodness. Not for the guy, but for me." Anyway, so that was another job loss. Where did I go from there? I went fishing. I figured, screw it. I was around the harbor, and I watched these guys. I bought my first boat. It was a 32-foot fantail that was built in 1912. Had a 40 horsepower Caterpillar in it. So Courtney, some of the guys will appreciate that. And it was a little 4-cylinder cat. It had a pony motor. The pony motor, that's a little gas motor that you use to start the diesel motor. And anyway, that has much horsepower as the main engine. But anyway, so I bought that boat and started sword fishing. And by that time I had a girlfriend, and she went fishing with me. And there was a lot of husband and wife teams. We weren't married yet, but that fished. And we did okay, to start out. And then I think, was it 1 year or the second year I had that boat, I saw a boat at the harbor that an old guy was retiring, and it was a 38-foot Kettenberg fishing boat. It carried 10 tons, and I was So I talked to my girlfriend's dad, had a friend, a rich friend in Balboa, and he lent me the money to buy that book. I paid it off the first year though. I made money. That was a money maker, that book. It's called The Margaret Age. So I'm locked into fishing now. And I got a nice girlfriend. We moved to, she's trying to keep me sober. We moved to Morro Bay, and she started going to Al-Anon. Unbeknownst to me. And here's where my drug thing starts, my drug thing. I used drugs through the 60s, but I never got, I would, excuse me, I would shoot heroin once in a while. And I thought, what's a big, and of course I'm a 60s anarchist. I think, well, these people are lying about the war. They're lying about a lot of stuff, and they're lying about drugs. This stuff doesn't get you hooked. I'd get loaded like once or twice, once in a while, but I was an alcoholic then. I drank, and so I didn't think much of the drugs. So when it came time to get sober, I did get lost right there right away. Good thing I got my notes. I had the Margaret Age. Oh, we moved to, my wife's going to Al-Anon, and I walked in the door. She could, when people don't get loaded, she could tell I'd get loaded on heroin about 3 times a year. And she could spot me at the driveway. I bought a little house. I owned a house. I had 2 trucks. She had a pretty new Subaru. I was doing good, except that I didn't think much about getting loaded once in a while. And I was unfaithful because I thought that's what men did. That's what my dad did. That's what my brother did. Everybody I knew did it because they were all alcoholics and drug addicts. But anyway, so I came in the house. My wife said, "If I see you loaded again, I'm going to divorce you." Boy, you could have knocked me over with a feather, to use that expression. I said, "Well, this is stupid. I'm not going to lose this everything to get loaded 3 times a year." So I quit. I had a 3-year period there, about 3 years. I had my time frame, but it was about that where I quit. I went, as we hear in AA here, that not here, but AA. I was a dry drunk, but I didn't know what that was. But I wasn't using it. I was working, exercising, and being unfaithful. That was the 2 things I did most of the time. Anyway, so eventually, my girlfriend moved next door to my wife's best friend. So that was the end of that marriage. And so now I'm divorced, and I'm trying to hurry it up. Now I'm divorced, and I figure, well, I might as well. The reason I didn't go offshore again was because I was married, and or whatever. And so now I'm divorced, single. I bought another bigger boat, a 65-foot boat called the Madonna, and I went to the South Pacific to fish tuna. And I did go. And while I was in the South Pacific, the first trip I made was 4 months long. I was out like 4 or 5 months. And we stopped at Easter Island on the way home. And I'm speeding up now. The first person I saw there, I let the crew go to shore. They were going nuts, right? And so I stayed on the boat, and I windsurfed back then. I quit surfing, started windsurfing avidly, and got okay at it. I wasn't a pro, but I was pretty good. Anyway, so I went windsurfing. I went to the beach, and I'll tell you, let's see, what year was that? That was like in the 90s, early 90s. There wasn't much on Easter Island then. But the first person I saw was at this little cafe, the only thing, and it was the girl that I ended up marrying. And she was I think I was 40 at that time, 42 or something. And so she said she was 20 or 10 or 20. She was 10 years younger. Anyway, but so I figured I filled the gap. I put her on the boat, and when we come back to the state, I brought her to the States, and that marriage didn't work, of course, And and we're still married. She and I have kids by her now. I have three kids. I have three kids. I adopted my oldest boy. I had the second boy, and I adopted my daughter. And they're all in my name. Anyway, so, and that's all going on to this day. And wonderful. And I repaired that relationship when I got to AA. And I got to AA. Okay, now we're going from the using the occasional drugs to more drugs, needing more money. So what do? And then some guy came over, and I was smoking crystal meth, and he said, yeah, you can make this. I went, what? You can make it? I said, well, that sounds like a good idea, And so I did. I started making crystal meth, and with the Mexican mafia. No, it didn't start with the Mexican mafia. I started with, we used to call them Beavis and Butthead labs, and we just little labs, make an ounce, and then these Mexicans moved next door and I had a little warehouse there that I kept all my fishing stuff. And they said, well, why don't we make this here? And I said, yeah, good idea. And so they started doing it, and that was the worst idea. Another one of my worst ideas. And to shorten that story, the next thing I hear is knock on the door, and it's the DEA, the meth task force from Long Beach, California. I don't know who else. There was a bunch of cops, and they said, and I knew something was down. So I thought I cleaned, excuse me, I cleaned the place up, but I'm really hooked on drugs. And I'm not drinking though. Through that whole period, I didn't drink. I was so afraid of drinking that because I'd had so many drunk driving, so much trouble, that I wasn't going to start down that road. I probably should have, but I didn't. Anyway, it would have been better than where I ended up. Anyway, they said, sit down and shut up. And that was the last free day I had for a couple of years. I went, they trumped up a bunch of stuff and how they do. And they wanted me. They knew that we were producing that methamphetamine. They knew that, and they were going to put that to a stop, and they did. And so the stop was me going to state prison in California for a couple of years. I think it's 3 years, and I did 2. And I was lucky to get that. I had money, so I had a good attorney. And my mom, at that time, now I'm borrowing money, lying to my mom to borrow money to support my habit. Just a lousy son, as lousy as it gets. And I tried to when I went to make amends after I got sober, after I got out of prison and started doing the program, she had like 3/4 Alzheimer's, and I would tell her, Mom, I owe you, I owe you this. Oh, naturally, oh, honey, it's okay. So I figured, you know what, I'll just do service. And I did. I took care of her for the last few years of her life, and with her Alzheimer's, and I had to change in her diapers and do all the things you have to do to people that are, and I was happy to do it. My brother, my alcoholic brother, attorney brother, who went crazy and finally got sober 3 years before he died. He moved back into my mom. So I'm taking care of both of them and doing meetings and fishing. And so that was okay, I'm okay with all of that, and my mom, luckily, gratefully, my mom just sat down in a chair and had a massive heart attack. And they called me, I was out fishing, and they called me from, my sister called me, and they opened up to give her some kind of surgery. I said, fuck, well, don't do that, but she died anyway, gratefully. And it was perfect, Anyway, but it was hard. I had my sponsor at the time, and I did have a sponsor for about 15 years, a secular sponsor. He didn't say he was atheist. but he was, he knew I was. So that worked out fine. And he's very, very old now, but it was a wonderful relationship while I had it. And that was, so now I'm sober in AA, made amends. I did not fall in love with AA. I didn't think, oh man, fun, Yeah, I went from prison to AA. So I went from prison to prison. Dogmatic bullshit, And but you know how we do. And but okay, I gotta shoot this in here. 3 days ago, I turned 20. So I've been sober for 20 years. Yeah, yeah. And you heard the story. Don't ask me how that's possible. But it is. Just don't drink day at a time. And so I'm weaving my way through. And I was about 5 years sober. And I told my sponsor, I said, and we had a guy at our men's group. I got sober in San Pedro, California, and our men's group was up on the hill there in Palos Verdes. And one of the guys from that meeting was oh man, now I am having well, I'll think of his name. Herb. No, not Herb. Yeah, Herb Kagan. Yeah, bingo. Anyway, so he's a very religious. He takes people through the steps. So I said, well, hey, hi, Herbie. My neighbor kids. I had never seen this before. Anyway, I asked Herb, I said, well, maybe I'll do that step. Not Herb, I asked Marv. I said, maybe I'll do the steps just so I can say I did them. So I did. And it was the worst experience I ever had. I just went, oh shit, how could anybody believe this? And and then you heard those back to the basic guys say, well, you got to do the steps as written in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I just finished, before I came on here, I was watching Roger C. podcast with John and the guy that wrote the Little Big Book, this one right here. And you don't have to do the steps out of the big book. And he said he gets like 1,000 hits a day for that, or I don't know, it's a lot. He's discontinuing the AA Agnostica his website. And so we have all of that stuff to help us now. And I got done with it. I told Barbara, I said, sure, I'm never doing that again. That's for sure. It was so weird. I was sitting at a table with this gal, and because that Herb Kagan had been in a monastery or whatever you call it, seminary for 7 years, and before he came out, and got into AA and stuff. And so anyway, I just talked to this lady, and she said, I forget how the topic come up. She says, oh, I'm a nun. And I was just not spewing, but I was talking my atheist backgrounds. And she was good with it. And I was, and that's how we need that here. We don't need this trailed step scroll on the wrong thing. Like Roger C. said, we need a scroll with alternate steps on every meeting room that's in AA. Anyway, okay, that's as far as I'm going to go with that. Anyway, let's see, where am I at on this thing here? Oh, the drugs. Yeah, hooked, the prison. Yeah, that's basically my sad but true tale. And I could go on about stuff. The kids, you want to hear about my kids? They're fabulous. And yeah, I get WhatsApps, and we're supposed to be getting a big reunion or some kind of reunion thing together here. And we were talking about, but it's so different to live here in Ecuador in South America. Like Courtney was talking about feeding the cat fresh fish. Well, sometimes I can get fresh fish and sometimes you can't. That's South America. You just like this guy, I live in a little studio apartment here on the beach, but this guy, they rent the front house. It's a big squash. it's like 2 stories and 3 or 4 bedrooms or whatever. The guy says, "Oh, what are you getting for dinner?" I'm walking out of my gate, you know. And I said, "I don't know." He says, "Oh," he was so surprised that I said that, because you don't know what. And sure enough, I got up to this little store here and they were out of hamburgers, you know, so I don't know what. I got a can of beans, typical that sort of thing. Okay, let's see. Okay, Bridget, I'm going to quit. I've had enough. Thanks. I hope there was the one thing, but I won't quit yet. Wait a second. I just want people that are drug addicts to feel, and by my share, you can be the worst, hopeless drug addict and recover. And you can do that without God. You know, you can do that with the support you'll get here from secular AA, you know. I said I wasn't gonna get emotional. That did it though. That hit the button. But but I'm okay with it. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Bridget. I love you, and I'll see you.